Okay, so let's continue with our tutorial, and the next part which we need to cover is animating our greeting. So before we actually add the animation, we need to understand a couple of properties. The first property that we need to understand is something called as transform. Basically what transform property does it allows us to move the elements to left, right, or top to bottom, or somewhere in our web page using uh, another value which is a translate, and initially translate is set to 0 px. The moment I increase the translation value, the div or the image element gets shifted towards left or right. For example, okay, s was one present here. Now this should work. So for example, if I add a translate of let's say 100 px, my image will get shifted by 100 px towards the right. If I go on reducing it, as you can see, my image is slowly shifting towards left. Now this happens till 0 px. Now if I go to my negative values, as you can see, my image is shifting towards the left hand side even more. Now if I give it a large negative value, let's say for example 200 px, and go on reducing it further, my image will get out of the page. Now if you notice the animation here, you can see that okay, the animation might not be visible right now, but the animation that we are trying to achieve is we are trying to slide this image in from right hand side towards the center of our page. And the way in which we can do is we can start the translation or my translate property to let's say a larger value like 300 px or 400 px, I think. So at 400 px or negative 400 px, my image is not visible, and slowly reduce it to 0 px, like in the steps of let's say 200 px, then 100 px, and eventually to 0 px, at which my image comes back to my original position. So that's the way my animation is going to work, which is we start from negative large negative value and slowly shift towards 0 px. Obviously negative 0 does not make sense, it is 0 px. Now the way in which we actually change these values in CSS is using something called as keyframes. So for that we use a keyword called as keyframes, and we give a name to our animation. In our case, since the image slides in from the left, we can give it a name like slide in from left. Now the name can be anything. Within the keyframes, we need to specify two values like let's say from and to, or to be more precise, what should be the value at 0%, that is initially, and what should be the final value of our animation. Now as you saw just now, my initial value needs to be negative 400 px in my transform translate, so that my image would start from the outside of my page and then move towards the center of my page. So at 0%, my transform value will have a translate property with a value of negative 400 pixels, and at 100%, my translate value will have a value of 0 px. Once I have my animation name defined, I need to use it, right? So in our case, we are going to use it in our image class, which is left image. So let's go back to our left image class, and the CSS property which we are going to use is called as animation. Now if you type animation and hit enter, these are all the properties which VS Code will tell you to fill into our animation property. Now the first property, which is the name of our animation, is obviously slide in from left. Duration will be in how much seconds this translation from negative to 0 value has to happen. For now, let's just try it at 400 px. Timing function is the kind of animation you want. In our case, since it is coming inside Out of these four available values, we are going to use easy. Delay is how much seconds it should wait before the animation should occur. In our case, it is 0 seconds. Iteration counts is how many times the animation has to repeat. In our case, I want it to repeat once. We don't need this direction and fill mode, so let's remove it. Now let's research the browser to see that what is actually happening when we hit save. So let's just see. Once I hit save, as you can see, in 4 seconds my image got translated from left to right. Since I don't want this image to take so much amount of time, let's just keep it to 1 second. And my image came back. Now another thing that I want is I don't want this image to be visible when it is outside the container. I just want it to be visible when it has came inside this yellow colored div. In that case, what we can do is we can set a property called as opacity. Opacity is basically how much amount of or how much transparency this image can have. For example, let me just show you what opacity actually means before proceeding further. So let's just say if I have this opacity value to 0, my image won't be visible at all. If I keep it at 0.5, it will be somewhat visible, and at 1 it is completely visible. So that is what opacity means. So at 0%, obviously I need it to be at 0, and at 100% I want it to have a value of 1. Now in CSS translations, we can assign a value in between 0 to 100%. So what we can do is at 80% value, I can keep this opacity to 0. What this means is until my animation has finished itself to 80%, the image won't be visible. After it is finished to around 80%, the CSS animation property will be visible. And as you can see now, my image is only visible when it is coming inside the div. Let's just refresh and see it again. Observe that it won't be visible here. See, it is visible at the end of our animation. Similar to how the image came in from the left hand side here, this text needs to come from right hand side. And as you can guess, we are going to create another animation for that. In that case, we again copy this code, paste it here, and we rename it to something like slide in from right. In that case, now if you can guess, since our image is sliding from the left, we started from negative 400px and came to 0. In this case, obviously I need to start from a positive value, like let's say 400px towards the right, which will move the text outside of the page, and then come back to 0px, which will bring it back from right hand side. So let's try that. In case of transform translate, we have a positive 400px value and it needs to translate to 0px at the end. Let's just see how to assign this animation property to our container. Now this is our right section which contains our text and description. We need to add a parent container to this board which will contain our text. So let's cut this and paste it within a parent div. Give it a class like let's say right section text. Copy this class back to our style. Paste it here. Give it the animation just like this. But instead of sliding from left, we have our animation sliding from right. And let's just check now. Now as you can see, the image got sliding from left and the text got inside the page from right hand side. See, left, right. Now another thing that I can do is I want this image to come first and text to come later. In that case, I can increase the slide in from right duration to 2 seconds. And now let's just hit reload. Image comes first, text comes later. Now the reason why my extension is crashing is probably because of the animations, but we can make it work. Next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that this greeting card is responsive. Now in case of Moto G4 it is working properly. In case of Pixel, yeah, it is working properly. So we don't have to do anything else here. And that is how we can create a responsive New Year greeting. That brings us to end of our step 3. Now the last step in our or the second last step in our session is to publish this greeting. For that, we go to a site called as CodePen, and in CodePen we can save our code and show it to others. If you haven't created an account, go to CodePen website and sign up with GitHub. That will be an easier thing to do. Then click on this pen, which is present here. And here we first rename this CodePen to, let's say, New Year greeting. Now we need to add the HTML which we just created here. In case of CodePen, we cannot add the head section, we just need to add the body tags. So let's copy this code from the divs to here, paste it here, then we copy our styles file and add it into our CSS part. Then we should have our greeting displayed somewhere here. Now in case of Bootstrap, what we need to do is we need to go to settings section and click on CSS part. I think there was something called as external files here. Let's just check. Yeah, so in this case we can add our external resources. In our case we need to add the bootstrap files which we just used initially. Go to download section and copy these files one by one. Since we just need a link, only copy the link from the src attribute, paste it here. Next, copy the CSS file in similar fashion and paste it here. Click on save and close. Now, okay, I think Bootstrap still hasn't loaded yet. So let's just go back to our pen and check why that is happening. Okay, CSS has to be added here. My bad. So let's just copy this CSS file from here. I hope, yeah, this is the CSS file. Cut it, remove this section and add it to our CSS section here. Add a CSS file here. That's my neighbor. And let's just save. And hopefully, yeah, so now Bootstrap is loaded and we have a working code. One thing that you might notice is our image is not visible yet. That is because CodePen doesn't allow images to be hosted directly from src attribute. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to a website called as Cloudinary, which allows us to upload our images. You can create an account here and you will be greeted with a dashboard here. Go to media library section and you can upload it anywhere. In my case, I am going to upload it in blog images section. I am going to click on browse and copy this image which we had added here And once it is uploaded, we will get a link like this. We'll copy this link by clicking on this clip icon, go back to CodePen and paste it in our src attribute. And now, as you can see, our CodePen is working fine. Now if you want to share it with others, what you can do is you can click on change view and click on full page view. In that case, now this is the file which can be saved with others. Okay, I think the image did not get saved. Yeah, so let's just hit save first. Now the pen is saved. Now I can go to full page view, and yeah, that is how our new year greeting got created. Now similar to, I think there is some issue there. Let me just check. Yeah, I pasted this text from here. Let's just remove it. And we have a working link which can be shared with others from here, right? One thing that I usually do is whenever I download any kind of image like this, I usually add a copyright or the source of the image just below my body tag. So let me just do that here. I think this can be added here so that the person who actually created this awesome image will have a proper description. Like Lumix designer, I think, created this image. Now I want this image to be below my greeting container. So again, for vertically aligning, we go for flex column property, and yeah, that finishes our code. Let's just copy this same code in our code pen so that even here we have an image attribute to the creator, or I can just copy this code completely, paste it here again. And we have a proper working code with all our changes saved. Now if I go to full page view, we have our new year greeting ready. Similar to new year greeting, you can create all sort of variations, but that brings to end of our step 4. And obviously step 5 is to share the greeting with others. So that brings us to just almost the end of our session. Now similar to how we created a new year greeting, we can also create a Christmas greeting like this. We can even create happy birthday greeting and so on and so forth. And you can even change the animations, and you can create something, some animation like which slides from the bottom or from the top and so on. So those are the variations left to you. So that concludes our tutorial. The last thing that we need to do is obviously push this code to our GitHub repo. So let's just, I think I'm just going to copy this URL from here and paste it here so that there is no confusion. And now we need to push our changes back to our repo or upload the changes. For that, we go to our changes sections. We click on this plus to stage all our changes or make them ready to be committed. We stage using the plus sign here. Go to these 3 dots, click on commit staged, and let's just add a commit message like greeting card added. Once I have done with commit, I am just going to click on push, which will upload my local changes to the GitHub repository. And if I come back to my GitHub repository, all the files which we just created right now will be visible here. Now, one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link of this repository in the description of this video so that you have access to the code which we created today. You can fork the repo and do only your own changes. Now, one thing before I wind up is, guys, uh, although this tutorial might be just around 45 minutes to 1 hour long, it took me around couple of hours to actually create this and make the entire workflow. So if you found this tutorial useful, please like this video, share it with your friends who are just starting into web development and who can learn from this tutorial. And please subscribe to my channel for upcoming videos like this so that you can learn more interesting projects like this in future. Thank you and have a nice day everyone. Bye bye.